Baywatch is the new R-rated action comedy starring Dwayne Johnson and Zac Efron that is basically a soft reboot of the original Baywatch television series. In this movie, the whole Baywatch crew discovers that there have been drugs all around the beach. People are finding them and dying from them, so it's up to them to investigate, while you have Olympic gold medalist Zac Efron joining them, trying to find out what's his place with his team, and basically trying to find out the very essence of what makes Baywatch so special. Honestly, I really had no interest in a Baywatch movie. The original show, it's corny, it's cheesy, it's why do we need a movie off this? But they announced that Dwayne Johnson was going to be in it, and I like Dwayne Johnson as an actor. He's very likable. They announced the director was the dude who did Horrible Bosses, which I like, and then Identity Thief, which is pretty awful. And when the trailers started coming out, I started to realize, yeah, this doesn't look that appealing to me. It just looks like some other R-rated comedy films that we've gotten before. But people started to bring up the argument of, oh, well, this could be like 21 Jump Street. You know how no one thought 21 Jump Street was going to be a good movie, but of course 21 Jump Street actually turned out to be a pretty great movie, so good that they made a sequel, and they're thinking about making a third one right now. And I started thinking about that, and they do have a point. Any movie that is very similar to Baywatch has the potential to compare to 21 Jump Street, had the same surprising success as that movie. So I started to think, yeah, maybe. But here's the thing. 21 Jump Street was done by two geniuses, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who honestly are hysterical dudes. Their movies are all great, and they knew exactly what to do with the Jump Street movies. That show was kind of goofy in a sense, and they knew exactly how to make fun of that, but while making their own great comedy. I looked up the writers of Baywatch. Now you compare geniuses like Chris Miller and Phil Lord to Seth Gordon, who's only made one good movie and one awful one, and then the writers of Baywatch. Who are they, you might be asking? Well, it's the two dudes who wrote Freddy vs. Jason and the Friday the 13th remake from 2009. That has comedic genius written all over it, doesn't it? In case you couldn't tell, this movie kind of sucked, and a lot of people are gonna ask, well, what did you expect? The original show wasn't that good. Yeah, but it was corny good, in a sense. You could watch it and just laugh at how ridiculous it was. They totally embraced it. But with Baywatch, they just went with the typical R-rated comedy route. There's so many jokes in this movie that just fall in line with every other R-rated comedy out there right now. Like a penis joke, a boob joke, let's say the F word over and over again. We got it. We've seen this before. There's not one joke in this movie that feels like it's special. It pertains only to this film. You could honestly take a joke out of this, put it in some other R-rated comedy, like Dirty Grandpa, Bad Moms, Fist Fight, and it honestly, you wouldn't be able to tell that it was from another movie. The original Baywatch is bad because of how corny it is, the excessive slow motion stuff, and just the over-the-top concept. This movie's bad because the humor they're trying to go for is just so lowbrow and like so familiar. This is why I like comedies like the Cornetto trilogy so much, because Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, when writing the screenplays, they took time, they thought it out, and they thought, what makes this funny? How can we make this funny? And they actually succeeded in that. Those movies, they have special humor that only pertains to those movies. This movie, like, who cares? We've seen a lot of this before in other comedies, and some of them have been done way better than what you're doing now. I will give credit to three actors, and that is Dwayne Johnson, Zac Efron, and Alexandra Daddario. They are trying. You can tell that they are trying to make this work. It's just that their charisma isn't enough to make up for these characters that are so poorly written and have nothing funny to say and nothing good dialogue-wise. But then you have this fat dude named Ronnie, who's clearly only there because he's fat. He's the fat guy. But here's the thing with his character. He's in love with CJ Parker, played by Kelly Rohrbach, who is just letting you know her character isn't funny. She's only there to be the hot girl that the fat kid's in love with. And they will inevitably sleep together and they will be happy forever. Their romance will blossom like a beautiful flower. And honestly, every time Ronnie was on screen, I literally wanted to punch him in the face because he's the most annoying part of this film. There's one overlong penis joke involving him. Basically, he's starting to choke on a carrot like, oh crap, I saw CJ, now I'm choking on this food I'm eating. She runs over and starts giving him the Heimlich, and then they go in slow-mo, and they make it look like, oh, it's so sexy, right? And it's like, no, stop. And then the dude pukes up the carrot like, oh, I got it out, but then he looks down, uh-oh, I have a boner. I can't let CJ see this, so how does he avoid letting this woman see his Big Johnson? Well, he doesn't like slowly like go to the ground like, oh man, like, oh thanks, or he doesn't like try to slowly do anything. He jumps down on this chair, this wooden chair, slams down on it, and in the very next cut you see that his penis has gone through like the boards, not straight down, like it's turned sideways. He jumps down, instead of it going straight down, like touching the sand, it turns sideways. What is happening? And so, of course, because now he's trapped, he can't get it out, they have to call Dwayne Johnson over, like, oh man, we gotta get this out. And they pull him up, and everyone sees it now, taking pictures, like, you aren't dragging this joke out way too long. But that's not the thing, that's just the thing. They have another overlong penis joke. You've seen it in the trailers. Dwayne Johnson and Alexandra Daddario and Zac Efron, they go to this morgue and they're examining a dead body. And Dwayne Johnson basically tells Zac Efron, I'll check his neck area where he looks like he got stabbed. You check his taint. And of course, Zac Efron is like, oh, that's so gross, lifts up the cloth. Oh no, like, oh. And the whole time Dwayne Johnson's encouraging him, like, come on, lift his balls, man. And like, oh, it's so disgusting. Oh, man, look at that. And, of course, Dwayne Johnson just pulls out his phone like, smile, ha, ha, ha. I'm posting this on Instagram. And first off, why would you post a picture of Zac Efron fondling this dead man's balls on Instagram? You're clearly not even supposed to be in this morgue right now. And second of all, that is just lowbrow humor. There's nothing funny about Zac Efron just going, while touching an obviously fake penis. It's not that funny. I only laughed like 3 times in this movie, I think, and it also didn't help that the theater I saw it in, the music was playing too loud and I could barely hear what people were saying at some time, so thanks, Cinemark. But that did give me an idea of the actual score of the film and the guy who did it, and while I was listening to the score, I was like, wow, this is so generic. I swear I have heard this score in other comedies before, and I looked up the dude, Christopher Lennertz, and I have his composer IMDb stuff right here, so I'm gonna read it off to you. And when I read this, I was literally like, okay, now this movie's score makes sense. And I'm only picking out the most notable ones, so here we go. He's done the scores for Alvin and the Chipmunks, the first movie, Meet the Spartans, Disaster Movie, Quantum of Solace, Marmaduke, Cats and Dogs, The Revenge of Kitty Galore, Vampires Suck, Hop, Horrible Bosses, Think Like a Man, Identity Thief, Think Like a Man 2, Ride Along, Horrible Bosses 2, The Wedding Ringer, Ride Along 2, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2, Kevin Hart's What Now, The Boss, starring Melissa McCarthy, and Bad Moms. Oh, and Smurfs The Lost Village. This dude has done scores for a ton of crappy movies, but for the most part, they're comedies. No wonder this score sounded so familiar, because this is the dude who keeps... But going back to the humor part of this movie, there's only one character who consistently made me laugh, and that's this cop character who pretty much is making fun of, like, you lifeguards are trying to be me, a police officer. That's not right. And that was actually kind of funny when he said that. There was one funny line from Efron where he's like, that sounds like a really entertaining but far-fetched television series. Like, okay, that's funny. But they weren't consistent with it. Like, that joke, that pertains to this movie. That only pertains to this movie right here. But every other joke surrounding him is just the same old shtick. And I don't care how big Dwayne Johnson's smile is, that smile can only get him so far in this movie. Because honestly, I thought for sure Dwayne Johnson will be the best part of this movie, and he's barely the best part of this movie. Like, his jokes really aren't that funny. They try to do something with Zac Efron's character, like in a dramatic way, doesn't work at all. They try to get him and Alexandra Daddario romantically interested with each other, also falls flat, doesn't work. The villain, she is the queen of falling flat in this movie. Her big plan is real estate. Something about real estate and drugs, I forgot, it's so dumb. But her lines, all the time, fell flat. Even if it's just regular dialogue, completely flat. I do not feel any form of suspense when you're in the room. You are nothing. Even comedically, you can't even work in a comedy film. And you might be thinking, well, Jackson, the comedy might not have worked for you, but this is an action movie too. It's an action comedy. Clearly, this must have some good action, right? Unfortunately not. The action scenes in this movie are all pretty horrible. Seth Gordon adapts the shaky cam style fights going on. There's one tracking shot where Zac Efron's like riding his motorcycle on the pier and going up, and he has to jump off it and swan dive into the ocean. That looked pretty bad. It had the potential to be pretty good because it's a tracking shot, but it looked pretty bad in this movie. There's other chases going on. There's a fight in a baby's room with Dwayne Johnson and this other dude. That also was just too shaky to really keep up with what was going on, but by far, one of the worst scenes I think I've ever seen in a movie. This honestly has one of the worst things ever in it, and that is this yacht. And it's on fire. You've seen it in the trailer. You know exactly which one I'm talking about. And I was seeing it. I was watching the trailer thinking, wow, that CGI and green screen, that looks pretty bad, but the movie still has to come out. This is just a trailer. They're going to touch up on it. They did not. It showed up in the movie, and I was like, no frickin' way. They didn't even try. Zac Efron just had a surprise face like, oh my god, and they cut to one of the fakest fire scenes I think I've ever seen in my whole life. It really is symbolic of the whole movie itself. You have a couple people that are trying, but the things surrounding them are just coming in on them, making it worse and worse and worse and worse. One shot, Dwayne Johnson jumping down with a dude with him, and the fire blowing up, green screen. It's so bad, it's awful. Oh my god, no suspense to be found, no jokes that were funny. Wow. And even the end battle itself isn't investing. There's nothing fun going on. There's nothing fun about this movie. There's one cop character who was kind of funny, and some actors were at least trying to do something good here. But for the most part, this movie is just a complete failure of what it was supposed to be. It's supposed to satirize Baywatch. It can't be that hard. But it was for them, apparently. Apparently they can't get it right. How hard can it be? The writers of this movie apparently are so inept they don't even know how to write a cameo. That's right, you probably heard it already, so who freaking cares? David Hasselhoff and Pamela Anderson have cameos in this movie. David Hasselhoff just kind of walks on set and just like, hey, Dwayne, what are you doing, man? I was your mentor, Mitch. Like, I guess it's a sequel because he's still Mitch and Dwayne Johnson's Mitch. Who cares? And then also later on in the movie, Pamela Anderson walks in. What's the joke? She looks like she's in slow motion. Everyone's, talking like regular, and then you see her just going really slow, and she doesn't even speak a line of dialogue. Who freaking cares? This movie sucks. I was gonna give it a D+, but thinking about it, this movie is horrible. I will give it some credit, though, so I'm gonna give Baywatch a D. Any R-rated comedies or any comedies in general out there, listen up. If your blooper reel in the credits of your film is somehow funnier than the majority of the humor in the actual film itself, then you have failed, and Baywatch is a failure. I'm sorry, Dwayne, I know you're attacking critics right now and saying it's for the fans, but honestly, I didn't have fun with this at all. But if you've seen Baywatch, leave in the comments below of what you thought of it, and as always, guys, thank you all for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.